So Iowa's improvement in tax competitiveness in recent years has come primarily from improvements in income taxes and corporate income taxes. And those are state level improvements. Property taxes are different. Those are driven by local level spending and are instituted by local governments. And so when local spending grows, property taxes also grow, even when the state cuts other taxes, as it has with income taxes and corporate income taxes. One of the biggest issues is that these taxes have grown faster than inflation plus population growth, which is a major benchmark for determining how fast these sorts of taxes could grow. This is it's hard for everyone, but particularly hard for low-income families and individuals who are on fixed incomes, who either haven't seen increases in wages in recent years, or for fixed income folks won't see those increases. Property taxes are the single largest source of local revenue. And so when spending increases, property taxes also rise. And reductions in spending, and consequently reductions in property taxes, become very difficult once those increases are in place. And just sort of mechanically, increases in housing values, particularly in urban areas, but also across the state, have increased in recent years. So, and finally, local governments just don't have a lot of other options for raising local revenue. So in Iowa, local income taxes aren't allowed. Local sales taxes are very limited and often earmarked. And so when localities can't turn to other forms of taxation to finance increases in spending, property taxes are what's left to be able to finance those increases. Now, I'm not advocating for an increase in those other forms of taxes. What I'm really saying is, in order to get a handle on the property tax problem, the state needs to get a handle on the spending problem, or localities need to get a handle on their spending problems more precisely. So I think the first thing to say is Iowa isn't unique in its thought about imposing this 2% limit. Even California, not a poster child for fiscal discipline, has a cap on property taxes. So the cap would limit how fast property or total tax revenue collected by local governments is allowed to grow. So what this would mean is that annual property tax revenue couldn't outpace a 2% increase plus growth from any new construction. So let's put this concretely. If in the current year, a city collects $10 million in property tax revenue, in the following fiscal year, they could collect no more than $10.2 million, a 2% increase in property taxes, plus any revenue that locality gained from new construction in that year. And so the big problem that this proposal is trying to solve is the problem of property tax bills that are rising faster than inflation or income. And so this proposal would stop that automatic growth. So I think it's kind of appropriate to say that, in short, this proposal is a spending constraint that's disguised as a tax rule. So Iowa would be using the tax system to help constrain that growth in local spending. And like I said, other states, including California and Massachusetts and Colorado, have similar constraints in place. So when you look at businesses, property taxes matter for businesses because they shape investment decisions. Property taxes are a major operating cost for manufacturers and for retailers. And so if Iowa wants to attract capital investment for other states or retain the capital investment that it has in the state, keeping property taxes competitive is really, really critical. When it comes to families, property taxes impact housing affordability, and not just for people who currently own homes. Of course, when property taxes increase, the mortgage payment that homeowners are confronted with increase as well. But for renters, landlords often pass those property tax increases along in the form of higher rents. And I'm not just saying this, there's solid economic research showing that anywhere between 30 and 85% of the increase in property taxes is passed on from landlords to renters in the form of those higher rent payments. And it also impacts potential homeowners. This is kind of a seen and an unseen issue going on here. But people who are facing an area with higher property taxes might choose not to move into that area to begin with if they see that they're going to just continually see higher bills year after year. And lastly, rural communities. Rural communities, I think, are particularly vulnerable to these high and rising property taxes because they don't have there's not a lot of economic diversification in these rural areas. Capital, other businesses are going to be less likely to move into those rural areas if the property taxes increase. And current farmers and landowners are really impacted by even small changes in those property taxes. And I'm actually from a rural area, a very, very small town in Illinois. And I think there's something really intangible that's lost when people leave those rural areas. There's just changes in culture when people don't want to remain in those rural areas. And if property taxes are hampering the ability of rural communities to be sustainable or to grow, that's really, really problematic. And so solving that property tax problem could also help solve the sort of hemorrhaging of population that rural areas and rural communities have seen in recent years.